Fabian Christensen, and today I'm going to do a comparison of two pens. These are both Pilot 78Gs. Now this is a very inexpensive pen. It costs maybe $19.95 or probably less. You can get them in a variety of different places, and they are made by the very famous Pilot Pen Company. And they're a pretty neat little pen. They're not particularly large. I'd say they're about 5 1/4 inches long with the cap on. The thing that's interesting about them is they write very well right out of the box, and they have very wide nibs in the wide nib models, and this is a B, a broad, and I got that from Todd Nussbaum at iSell Pens, and this is the elusive and very interesting Pilot Double B. This is a double broad. Both of these pens are the same color, and they're both charged with Zhivago, Noodler's Zhivago ink. You'll notice one thing about it. This one, by the way, the double broad, that one came from Spear Bob on eBay. Now, one thing you notice about them is that they're very lightweight. They do have a decent ink capacity. It's nothing to really write home about. The nibs are gold color. I doubt sincerely that they're anything like 14 karat gold. But particularly the broad nib, this one, is very fluid. It's kind of like a stub because, as you can see, the downstroke is much wider than the side stroke. And that makes for a rather pleasing kind of, I suppose, stub-like appearance. So when you write, the color of the ink comes out very nicely because you're putting down a nice thick line. It's not particularly wet line, not like I showed you yesterday on the Pelican. It goes right into the paper. This is the same kind of paper. But you can see with the Zhivago, well, maybe you can't see because of the lights and such like, but it's a good rich color, and you can tell that what I'm writing is legible. Okay, so I'd say that the 78G in the broad point is a very, very good pen. Well worth having. It even comes in a lot of different colors. And like I said, you can get this for a relatively small amount of money on iSell Pens. This one, on the other hand, I was crazy mad to get this double broad. If the regular broad was going to do this well, I could imagine that the double broad was going to be a real winner. I opened it up today, and yes, it is a very broad-looking nib. Hope that you can see a little bit. Very, very broad. It almost looks like a true italic pen. The downstroke is so much thicker than the upstroke, and it's fairly wet. Of course, how it looks is going to depend on the kind of paper you're writing on. You can see that the color is very rich. It does kind of scratch just a little bit. It doesn't seem to skip. It does make the ink, of course, look a good deal more shaded in a couple of spots. And this is not a shaded Zhivago. This is just straight out of the bottle. I don't really like writing with this pen so much because the side strokes can be real thin to the point where on the wrong paper it's going to be hard to read them. And if you have a very light ink, I tried this out originally with Sahara Gray by De Altramitas, and it was just too light, you couldn't read it, which is a bad thing. I think that this is a fun pen to use, don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking it, and particularly for the price, I think it's very good. It's not real smooth, and unless you're intrepid and you want to go ahead and try to smooth out a nib, I wouldn't recommend it on these because I've read someplace that the nib has a very, very, very thin little coating of something up here, and if you rub that away, it's going to become very, very scratchy. I don't like to admit it, but I found that out the hard way, and so I'm not going to be doing that again. But if you know what you're doing and you have a lot of self-confidence, perhaps you could smooth it out a little bit. Because right now it's not the smoothest pen you ever used, and that doesn't make it the most fun writing experience you ever had. But I'd say for the price, if you're looking for a very broad-line pen, lightweight, with good ink capacity, and not real expensive, the 78G Double Broad Pilot might be just your ticket. Although I'd say that out of the two of them, the broad tip, the broad nib, is, to my taste, a lot better. As you can see, they're pretty extremely different. And this is Fabian Christensen, and that's my review of the Pilot 78G Broad and Double Broad nib.